Thank you for taking the time to learn more about Shoelace Park and the Shoelace Park Master Plan. This presentation is being recorded on February 9th, 2024. So if you're looking at this at some point in the future, hopefully we've made some of the improvements that we'll be talking about later in this video. My name is Sid. I am the Greenway Coordinator and at the Bronx River Alliance, and we'll just jump right into it. But before talking about the Shoelace Park Master Plan, I wanted to quickly talk about the history of the Bronx River and the Bronx River Alliance. The Bronx River Alliance serves as a coordinated voice for the river. We work in harmonious partnership to protect, improve, and restore the Bronx River corridor. Our goal is to make a healthy ecological, recreational, educational, and economic resource for all communities through which the river flows. The Alliance works in close partnership with the New York City Parks Department, as well as dozens of community-based partners, regional nonprofits, businesses, and all levels of government. Before the Bronx River Alliance, community members began working to clean up the river 50 years ago in 1974. We're actually celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Bronx River restoration, where locals worked together to remove pollution from the river and conduct bank stabilization. There used to be cars and refrigerators, and through the decades of work from community members, we've been able to pull a lot of that trash out of the river, and the Bronx River Alliance was formed about 20 years ago. At the Bronx River Alliance, we have several programs. We have the ecology program, which focuses on the health of the river itself, the educational program, which brings students to the river to learn about it, the foodway program, which manages one of the only public, freely accessible food foraging forests in New York City in Concrete Plant Park, the Greenway program, which is the construction of parks and trails along the river, and those are all linked by our outreach and recreational programs that help bring people to the river, get people on the river for the first time, and show people how amazing it can really be. So what is the Shoelace Park Master Plan? A very simple way to phrase it before jumping in is that the Shoelace Park Master Plan is a plan that analyzes the current conditions of Shoelace Park and makes several detailed recommendations to improve it. The plan gives specific examples of what these improvements could look like. Bronx River Alliance has held walkthroughs with Bronx Community Board 12 in 2012 and 2021, assessing current conditions and having preliminary discussions around prioritizing projects. Some of the successes we've had so far include the 233rd Street connector and the Webster Ave connector, which you can see on the right side of your screen, that connect you up to Westchester County and Muskrat Cove, the furthest northern park on the Bronx River in Bronx County. There's also been some promenade and greenway refurbishment that has taken place, improving the quality of the upper path in Shoelace Park. So now we'll discuss the current conditions. On the right side of your screen, you can see the profile. Shoelace Park is called Shoelace Park because of how thin it is, like a shoelace. It's just essentially the width of one block between Bronx Boulevard and the Bronx River Parkway, and that includes the river within those borders as well. It is historically on the bed of the original Bronx River Parkway, which is constructed almost 100 years ago, and has taken up that place, has been reclaimed for parkland. Shoelace Park is located along Bronx Boulevard between 211th Street and 233rd Street in Bronx Community Board 12 and City Council District 12. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a picture of some of the lower paths. For those of you familiar with Shoelace Park, you know that there's an upper path and a lower path and some connecting paths in between. These paths, especially on the lower portions, they get flooded out very often. There's a lot of erosion happening, and it may not be the most accessible for people in wheelchairs or people pushing strollers or people with accessibility issues in general. There is some river access in Shoelace Park at 217th Street. by the Olinville Playground, you can access the dock right there. We host some paddling programs out of Shoelace Park throughout the year. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. They typically our biggest event in Shoelace Park has been the Shoelace Park Showcase, which is a relatively new event over the last couple of years, and that takes place in October, provided it doesn't rain. There are several park resources within the park as well. It stretches 22 blocks, and it includes things like playgrounds and gardens and basketball courts and bathrooms. But unfortunately, a lot of these resources are located in the floodplain, which you can actually see a map of on the bottom of the screen. And that basically means that when it rains a lot, the river will swell to its floodplain zone. This is naturally how a river will function. And when all of our park resources are placed within the floodplain, they are at risk, both in the short term and the long term. So the Shoelace Park Master Plan creates a list of recommendations to improve the park. The first is to improve park access and resources for the community. The second is to manage rainfall and flooding. And the third is to support the ecology of the river and the park. So improving access and park resources. This is the reimagined system of trails for Shoelace Park. It divides the trails into 3 different categories: nature trails, park walks, and the promenade. Currently, we kind of see our park walks and our nature trails blend together near the river, while the promenade is in good shape and has been refurbished somewhat recently. Here you can see cross sections of each of the different trails that were posted in the last slide. The promenade is this big one here. Then you have the park walk, which is the paved park walk that would be in the middle of the nature trail and the promenade. And then finally you have the nature trail, which is an unpaved walk nearest to the river, focused on immersing in nature. And as you can see in the large picture of the promenade, this includes moving park resources that are in the floodplain up onto the promenade area, onto the promenade level of the park, to prevent them from being flooded out. The second goal is to manage rainfall and flooding. As we know, with climate change, as there's more rainfall and the severity of rainstorms has increased and has become more random throughout the year. And this can affect such a small park, such as Shoelace, because as I mentioned before, half of it is located within the floodplain. It is on a hill. There's lots of erosion. It makes parts of the park inaccessible. While the Shoelace Park Master Plan proposes a variety of different stormwater best management features and best management practices that could help control rainwater and flooding within the park, as well as the swelling of the river that occurs during massive rainstorms. These includes things like swales, which capture stormwater underground as they're making its way down towards the river. There's also trench drains along the promenade that will capture water and funnel it to a sewer system instead. Rain gardens can both act as pollinator gardens as well as areas that will soak up additional water. There are dozens of different ways to increase the capacity of stormwater absorption. And you can look at the bottom, there's a list of different parts along Shoelace Park that have been improved in blue. And then in pink, you can see proposed actions as well. So there's lots of opportunity to increase the amount of stormwater capture we have here in Shoelace Park. Here are some pictures of different types of stormwater features, such as a armorized swale adjacent to the pavement, which I mentioned before, similar to a trench. This would be near the upper promenade. You can see that's B. And that basically filters rainwater into the trench before sending it downhill and redirecting it in a way that is easier to manage. On the bottom, you can see some more natural looking features, such as bioretention basins or rain gardens, which, as I mentioned before, can act as habitat as well as stormwater capture features. And finally, there's supporting the ecology of the river and the park. Our green spaces are immensely important in the face of climate change. Um, they are able to absorb heat and prevent urban heat island effect from occurring in localized areas. And supporting the ecology of the river and the park can also provide benefits to the community members. Increased tree canopy can reduce the heat island effect in this park. And this is a map of proposed restoration efforts across a handful of different ecosystems. You can see riparian upland forest restoration is recommended in this red rectangle, as well as upland forest ecosystems and even pastoral ecosystems, which would more resemble a meadow. There are dozens of different potential restoration projects that we can undertake with regards to the ecology of the river and the park. Here's a list of ongoing and recently completed projects from 2010. So this is from 14 years ago. You can take a look at some of these that have been either scheduled or completed. And quite frankly, there was a lot of work done 14 years ago. And this current Shoelace Master Plan, which was from 2010, proposes the next series of improvements to the park. So what are the next steps? The next steps are to work with the community board to prioritize project recommendations from the Shoelace Park Master Plan. And then once those projects are prioritized, we work with the Parks Department and elected officials to access funds and advance these projects. We hope we can work with community members in Community Board 12 and Council District 12, and those who use Shoelace Park as a haven, as a getaway, as a way to get around their neighborhood, to improve it for the future, to make it more climate resilient, and make it a feature of the neighborhood itself. If you have any questions about the Shoelace Park Master Plan or you want to get involved, please email greenway@bronxriver.org. To access the Shoelace Park Master Plan, simply search it on Google and click on the first link. Thanks for taking the time to listen and learn more about the Shoelace Park Master Plan. If you're interested in other work at the Bronx River Alliance, please visit bronxriver.org.